Let's talk apologetics. I want to dive into the topic of the deity of Christ. I want to look at what the New Testament has to say. Is Jesus the Yahweh of the Old Testament? Well, according to my Muslim friends, he's not. I want to look at specifically some statements by Dr. Shabir Ali. He is a Muslim apologist, a Muslim scholar in his field, and he does a teaching on the Gospel of Mark. He goes through the book. I want to look specifically at his statements of the very first few verses of the Gospel of Mark and see what he says. Does that hold weight according to what the Bible actually says? Is he right? Let's look at what the actual text of Mark has to say and see how Mark utilizes the Old Testament to tell us who Jesus truly is.
The opening scene where John the Baptist is there preaching, and he preaches with words from the Old Testament where it says, I will send my messenger ahead of you who will prepare your way, a voice of one calling in the wilderness, prepare the way of the Lord, make straight paths for him. Some Christians use this passage to indicate that Jesus must be Yahweh of the Old Testament. There's a long and complicated discussion that can ensue from this, but I want to take a quick walk through. And for the moment, it will suffice to say that the passages have been modified in order to make it such that there is a reference now to Jesus, yes, using words from the Old Testament, but Jesus is not being presented clearly in these passages as Yahweh. If he is being presented as Yahweh, that presents another complication that we don't have time to explore now, but we will, God willing, deal with that in another presentation. So for the moment, there's nothing here that indicates the divinity of Jesus. Rather, it indicates that he needs someone to come before him and who is going to baptize him, which happens now in this case. John the Baptist is here baptizing, and people were confessing their sins, coming to him to be baptized.
I find it interesting that Dr. Shabir Ali makes those two comments, saying that Jesus is not being presented as Yahweh, and there is nothing in the text that shows his divinity. However, when you look at how Mark is utilizing the Old Testament, he's quoting from Malachi chapter 3 and Isaiah chapter 40. When you actually look at those texts and in its overall context, you see it's talking about Yahweh, the creator of all things, coming, being prepared, just like the text in Mark is using, and he's applying that to Jesus. So let's look at Malachi and Isaiah now.
Malachi chapter 3 verse 1 says, Behold, I send my messenger, and he will prepare the way before me. And the Lord whom you seek will suddenly come to his temple, and the messenger of the covenant in whom you delight. Behold, he is coming, says the Lord of hosts. If we look here where it says, Behold, this is Yahweh speaking, behold, I send my messenger, which would be John the Baptist, and he will prepare the way before me. The speaker here saying me is Yahweh, going back to the I, send my messenger, and also down at the bottom where it says the Lord of hosts. He's the one speaking. And then it says, and the Lord whom you seek will suddenly come to his temple. This is Yahweh coming to his temple. Isaiah 40 verse 3, a voice cries, In the wilderness prepare the way of the Lord. Make straight in the desert a highway for our God. Every valley shall be lifted up, and every mountain and hill be made low. The uneven ground shall become level, and the rough places a plain. And the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together, for the mouth of the Lord has spoken. In verse 3, in the wilderness was John the Baptizer. He is preparing the way for who? It says, the Lord, the Tetragrammaton, Yahweh. It says, make straight in the desert a highway for our God. So who is our God according to Isaiah? It is none other than Yahweh. Verse 5, and the glory of Yahweh shall be revealed. The reason that the glory of Yahweh was being revealed was because Yahweh was coming to his temple. It was Yahweh being revealed. Mark chapter 1, the beginning of the gospel of Jesus Christ, the Son of God. As it is written in Isaiah the prophet, Behold, I send my messenger before your face, who will prepare your way. The voice of one crying in the wilderness, Prepare the way of the Lord, make his path straight. You can see, verse 2 is the quotation from Malachi chapter 3, which says, Behold, I, which is Yahweh, send my messenger, John the Baptizer, and he will prepare the way before me, which is Yahweh, and Yahweh is the one that is going to suddenly come to his temple. Again, that's what John the Baptizer is preparing the way for. It is Yahweh to come to his temple. And we see in Isaiah 40, in the wilderness, which is again John the Baptizer, preparing the way for Yahweh, making straight in the desert a highway for our God. Again, who is Isaiah's God? It is none other than Yahweh. This is what Mark is showing us, that the one that John the Baptizer is preparing the way for is none other than Yahweh.
As we can see, Dr. Shabir Ali is wrong. According to the Gospel of Mark, the way that he is applying those Old Testament passages to Jesus, it is no other person than that Jesus is the Yahweh of the Old Testament. He is the Lord of all. So again, please understand that the Gospel of Mark is 100% making an affirmative case that Jesus is the Yahweh of the Old Testament. God bless.